Aloha, everybody. And to our friends in Hawaii, that's why we're doing this, So Harvey and Scott, if you got up at dark 30 so that you could be on this, 6 hours or, I guess behind us, right? So, man, that's earlier than I care to think about. So anyway, we do have a question that's already arisen. So thank you very much for sending that to us, Scott. And thanks for connecting us to Scott Harvey. You guys know the drill. Q&A is where you hit for questions and answers, and then you can harass us in the chat. We do have some questions. We're going to be focusing on ERTC today. And if you guys have any other questions, that's cool too. That's what we're here for. So anyway, and Mike had asked some questions last week. I think we can kind of go back through that, see if you guys had done any additional homework, because I think we were supposed to send him an email. And sorry, Mike, I probably dropped the ball on that. So I was trying to find a lay. So anyway, Jack, you're laughing. He didn't get the memo on finding the lay, and evidently he has lays at home. He's been to Hawaii, or he knows people who have been there. So
I had Hawaiian shirts and everything. So sorry. I'll maybe next week I'll make it up to you, and we'll have like a retro, 1 week delay. So.
Perfect.
Sorry.
All right, cool. You have any thoughts that you want to jump into before we dive into some of these questions? Jack, you've seen some of the chatter on ERTC things.
Yeah, I mean, nothing in particular. I mean, we can go ahead and proceed to answer questions. I think we mentioned before, going back to the PPP and the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, that those funds are being limited or are limited. There's talk about the fact that these questionnaires for the people who received larger loans are going to be thrown out or not used or not be required to be, some of those really deep questions. That doesn't mean you can throw away your paperwork. Please keep all your paperwork and your documentation, because it's very bipolar thinking. And some days it's like, yes, we're going to proceed with asking a lot of deep questions about whether you were deserving of that money. And then other times it's like, well, we're going to take a leap of faith at certain levels. So, please do keep all of your documentation in relation to any request for funds and forgiveness. And, hopefully this will be an afterthought soon and we can all move on.
Yeah, I'd echo Jack's comments that, hearing that was a big, I think, sigh of relief on a lot of our clients' parts to know that they don't have this, hey, somebody's going to ask me to really prove that I needed the money hanging over their heads, which is really, the vein of the questions on that form were really around, hey, you took over $2 million, prove that you really, really needed it. And it's like, that's against the whole fundamental premise of what we've been talking about this webinar, which is you didn't know if you needed it at the time. So what are you supposed to do now, and how is that fair? So I'm really happy that they made the decision that there's other stuff they ought to focus their attention on. So thank you, whoever decided in the administration that was a good idea. 2 thumbs up from me, the BGW team, and probably the Shoemaker team. Because I really, hey, it's extra fees for BGW. I was not looking forward to having to support those. That sounded like it's probably going to be worse than an IRS fine because you're going to be vague. So, and totally subjective. So that was one. On the employee retention tax credit side, I'll go ahead and get to Mike's question too. But I think, I think Gary had mentioned in the last call that, we were looking to figure out how we're going to do a lot of this stuff ourselves to help our clients with BGW. And I think the conclusion we reached is that, we found a third party that we've got a high degree of trust and confidence with. We're, currently trying to get through negotiating some pricing to make sure our clients get a discount. But the long story short is we're going to partner with somebody to make sure that we can process the volume of stuff that we think is going to come through. And based on that, we're going to work on getting our clients a discount. But in working with this group, what was critically important for us was knowing that they were aligned with us philosophically that, hey, this isn't going to be a rubber stamp, check. Everybody qualifies. It's free money. So I think we're in alignment with them that really, and this is the exception rule, remember, yeah. And again, remember, Adam is not, doing a journal entry with something that was subjective to get you to the revenue qualification test is not beneath me, especially if the journal entry itself was subjective. But if you don't meet the revenue qualification test for the employee retention tax credit and you're falling under the exception guidance, which is the government shut me down. We're in alignment with this group that, and I think the position that we're going to take with all of our clients, I mean, you may find somebody else who will say yes, it will not be us. But basically, that exception is pretty laser-like on two extremely specific scenarios. Scenario one is the government shut down your place of business. And, if you think about black and white, it's the restaurant. If you think about, kind of gray, it would be, our place of business is we go into, you want to say hi, Chris? Global weather.
We're broadcasting live from the beautiful Langtree Plantation.
And this is Chris
North
McKee,
of Charlotte.
one of the owners. If you want to come
Hey.
and say hey.
Good to see you, Chris.
So the it's pretty crystal clear that a restaurant's going to qualify in other hospitality, and things like that. Gray would be, something like a law firm that has a very significant litigation practice. Well, the court shut down, so I can't practice law. Outside of those two specific scenarios, really the guidance has been pretty crystal clear. And unfortunately, it's not, when it's crystal clear, we don't agree with it, but it's just the guidance that they have. If your customer was shut down, that's, unfortunately, you don't qualify under the theory that then you would qualify under the revenue reduction criteria. However, if your supplier was shut down, you would qualify. So I can appreciate how that would seem to be in conflict with each other until you think about it from the government's perspective. It was really around, look, if your customer was shut down, the customer is going to qualify, and you would qualify because your sales were reduced. Ergo, you're under the 50% qualification criteria, the 20% qualification criteria that's 2021. However, if your supplier was shut down, while we get that you might not have met the revenue reduction criteria, you couldn't do your thing due to something we did to your supply chain. So, I think our criteria is going to be things that were specifically shut down due to government order and places where the supply chain was disrupted. And that, that really is about it. So, I mean, if you have people that are pushing you on the exception clause and everybody qualifies under the exception clause, we just don't agree with that. We think it's a little bit, it requires more thought than that. And I think that's going to be kind of our operating criteria for that qualification under that exception going forward, which is either directly shut down or, your supply chain was shut down. So that's that. So to Mike's question, Mike had a question last week that, we said, hey, we'll look that up. That sounds interesting. And then I said I would send out an email, and then I didn't. So I appreciate Gary taking one for the team and making me look good. And the question was, hey, I read this thing in the CNBC article that says that I could use a Form 7200 to get an expedited credit back for 2020, so I don't have to wait on an amended payroll tax return. And the answer is yes. And the deeper answer is when. So unfortunately, that time frame is passed, because with the Form 7200, what you're really doing is you're applying for an advanced credit for a payroll tax return that you intend to file. So you're saying, give me the credit that will appear on this future dated tax return. Well, if you're operating in 2020, the last future dated tax return that you actually had that could have occurred in 2021, but was for 2020, was your quarter four 941. And the quarter four 941 filing date's already passed. So that window of time was really limited. So the Form 7200 really is, you can use it now, but I think for pretty much everybody, assuming that you've been timely filing your 941s, it's going to be only applicable to 2021 payroll costs, and you're still stuck with the 941 amendment process for anything that occurred in 2020. So you could use the Form 7200. Unfortunately, that ship sailed depending on when you had a filing date for that quarter four 941 for 2020. That's already, not a payroll expert, but I'm pretty sure that now that it's July, that date is done and dusted.
I'm impressed. He wasn't reading that off of this email, so he remembered that. So very good. Yeah. Good job, man.
I like thought about it all week in terms of, I really got to get that email out. I really got to get that email out. I really got to get that answer. Mike lives up by me, so I see him out from time to time. I'm like, I can't run to the mic. I haven't answered the question yet. So
probably not the answer you were looking for, Mike, yeah. But at least you got the answer. We will get to Scott's question here from Hawaii. But I want to address a question that just came in, or it's just kind of an observation that does tie into what he was talking about, which is PPP forgiveness is taking a long time to get approved by SBA, FYI. Also, the EIDL additional funding seems to be moving really slowly. This is my shock face. It has to do with the government. There's a delay.
Yeah, you're not hearing anything, John, that is like, in other words, we're not hearing anything differently either, so it's not you, it's them. That's always validating to hear. As much as you don't like hear it, at least you didn't mess something up. That's pretty consistent with what we're seeing across the board.
Yeah, I'd seen some articles about that and people complaining about the same thing, and I looked up. So there's a statement, and this was by an accounting organization that was saying what was supposed to happen. It says, once a borrower applies for EIDL, approval timelines can vary depending on volume. Typically, a decision is made within 21 days of application and disbursement of money within 5 business days. And so that's obviously not happening. And that's what was supposed to happen. So again, promises made, not kept, but you're in a very large boat with a lot of people.
Yeah. It's kind of like going to the DMV. Get ready and bring some snacks. All right. So if you guys are okay, I'm going to go ahead and launch into this from Scott. I'm going to see if he's on here real quick, because if he is, he gets a medal as far as I'm concerned, because I did see a Scott in here.
Yeah, that's different.
Not different Scott. So he's going to have to catch it on maybe best intentions. But we will address this question. He even sent a picture, which is pretty cool. I'm going to show this to you so you can see. Whoop.
Yeah, you got that, Jack.
There you go. Actually, I think, Jack, I copied you on this, so maybe you got it. But here's the question. First of all, pleasure to meet you. Thank you in advance for taking time out of your day to review my questions. So Scott operates 3 S corporations in Hawaii, affiliated companies through the same direct ownership percentages and management. Companies have collectively have received the following government assistance through 2 programs. So they've got PPP-1, PPP-2, and ERC. They've got in all 3 of these entities, which is pretty cool. Company 2 did not apply for PPP-2 as it didn't experience a 25% decline in revenue. Per his understanding of the ERC rules, the 20% revenue decline was based on the look back period for all affiliated companies. The 3 affiliated companies met the Q1 ERC 20% decline test, 2020 Q4 versus 2019 Q4. and I filed ERC up to the date which I was funded for PPP 2 and company 1 and 3, which was week 10 of 2021. This is a complex word problem. So pay attention, Rain Man. In order to be risk averse, I cut off company 2's payroll at week 10, also since the other affiliated companies got PPP2 funds. Now that you've got the background on the program and tests, my questions are, 1, could I have claimed for company 2 the full Q1 wages for ERC? Let's deal with that one first.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to deal with all of them because I'm reading them over Gary's show.
Okay, all right, then I'm going to go ahead and read the second one for the sake of the listeners and viewers. Based on the ERC 20% decline affiliated tests, the affiliated companies were down more than 20% for Q1 of 2021 versus 2019 Q1, which means if I did not have PPP2 funds, I could claim ERC for Q2. Can I claim ERC for company 2 for Q2 of 2021 since they did not receive PPP2 funds? Or was my Q1 decision to cut off wages in week 10 correct based on the affiliation of the companies?
Yeah, so, the affiliation rules get pretty confusing, but here's generally my interpretation. If you look at PPP, each company stands on its own. So if you look at ERC, you can look at affiliated companies, but the affiliation company is really, if one's down, we're going to assume that all of it, you can go ahead and claim it for others that may not be down, assuming that they're affiliated companies. So in this specific situation, I think that you could still potentially claim some ERC dollars on the company that had PPP2. And I definitely think that you could have continued on ERC dollars on the company that did not take PPP2 in the first place. Just my 2 cents.
And that was company 2.
Yeah, as a Food Lion would say.
Jack, you have any additional thoughts on that?
Well,
you just want to validate?
Yeah, I mean, yes, ditto, but the affiliation rules can be somewhat complex. So assuming that, as Adam said, treating them separately under PPP, but potentially related under ERTC. So, we'd have to dig deeper into, the nature of the affiliation and ownership, because that's affiliation, lowercase a, affiliate, it can be used quite loosely. But for these purposes has a very specific definition in both programs. So, we need to know more about those two entities that were in the problem-solving question posed to us.
All right, we've got a question here from Heather. I've got a client who received a notice saying that the approved amount they already received and spent have been reviewed and it is not correct. So are they needing to return the funds? Any guidance on how they should proceed or steps they can take? They called their bank and that they had applied through, and the bank said nothing that they can do to help.
Yeah. So I think, and I didn't check to see on the participant list if David and Robert were also on the call, but
I saw.
It's been our general experience that in a scenario like this, I have not seen yet a scenario where the problem was on the what did you spend the money on side. So if Heather, if your problem is it's the money, it's on the spending of the money side, we haven't seen that yet. So I would say if that was me having to make that argument, I'd say, point me to the authoritative source that says that I cannot use what I used and I'll fix it. The problems that we've seen are on the receipt of funds side. meaning like they gave you too much money. So for whatever reason, they believe that they gave you too much money. And those come in two categories. Category number one is you really did get too much money. And where we've seen that happen was really in the early days, the fog of war, the independent contractor rules were really vague, and some people got some money for independent contractors that they shouldn't have got. Or, early days, fog of war, screwed up the payroll cost calculation because they put this stuff in that shouldn't have been in, and blah, 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 blah. So those are legit. It's like, look, they're right and you're wrong. So now you have a loan. In other cases, we haven't had it happen, but I know that Robert has, the bank's wrong. Like they're just wrong. Like it could be the bank, it could be the SBA, it could be the consultants that are advising the bank to help them process applications. Because remember, a lot of companies outsource both the application process and the forgiveness process to a third party to do the evaluation before they send it up to the SBA. And it could be that they're just dead ass wrong. In which case, heck yeah, I'd bite down and argue back and, say, point me to the authoritative source that says that you're right. It sort of fits in the expense mold. So when the bank says nothing that I can do to help, I would say, well, I'd like, what's the basis for the denial? And if the denial is you're wrong, it's like, there is nothing that you can do. But if the basis of the denial is you're actually really correct, then first course would be, appeal to the bank so that they'll submit the application. Second course would be follow the SBA appeal process. We haven't had that happen yet. I just know that there is one.
Or you can call Robert because he fought the bank and won.
Yeah.
And Robert, you are on here, so thank you.
What's that song? I fought the law and the law won in this case. But I fought the SBA and
Robert won.
and I would
by the way, it's his second week of his second anniversary in business for Survival CFO. So we wore shirts last week. Thank you very much for that, Robert. Go ahead, Jack.
That's right. I was going to say, when I hear this story, I get very, very suspicious. Similar to, obviously Adam is expressing that as well, which is, where did this denial come from? Is it legit? Why is the bank saying not my problem? Because it kind of is. Now all of a sudden, money that has been funneled by them that the SBA is supposed to cover, now there's a repayment expectation that funnels through the system. So it changes the nature of this grant into a loan. So for the bank to say, yeah, not my problem, yeah, it is their problem. And also to Adam's point that, is this an error? And recall, and we've discussed this previously, that a lot of this is automated, it's algorithmic. And so, if you're not spot on, sometimes it'll kick it out. And, the bank may be saying, well, we're not the ones who kicked it out, so not our problem. But again, it's their problem. So I would go back to the initial denial, get more information, talk to the bank and say, okay, well, if it is not forgiven, what does that mean? Like, where do I send payments to? What does, just do what I call the Peter Falk Columbo. It's like, okay, you kind of know the answer, but you're asking them because you want to know what they know or what their expectations are. So I would ask those questions of the source of the denial and of the bank.
So if you're 30 years or older, you're just going to have to Google Columbo. Those of the three of us know who that is, but we're over the 30.
Wait a minute. Let me get this straight.
Trench coat and cigar sometimes, right? Yeah.
So before we jump into Beth's question, Jack, I'm just curious, have any of your partners at Shoemaker been engaged to help somebody that's having to fight the bank?
Somewhat, but not formal litigation yet. A lot of it is the hesitation is because, well, first of all, we don't want to be the beta testers and spend a ton of money to get a ruling that other people are going to leverage upon. I don't say we're happy to do the work, but our clients are not willing to do that. And a lot of times our clients are able to work it out once they, ask the appropriate questions. It's frustrating because you have to ask the same question to multiple people. And then it's like, well, let me put you in touch with the right person. And then you never hear back. And then you call their 800 number and you never. So a lot of it is persistence, and persistence that the client is able to do or maybe wanting to do, so that way our meters are not running while we're basically doing things that they can do. So there's no magic yet to utilizing our letterhead necessarily, other than there's been instances where there has been clients that have been blown off essentially, and it's like, hey, I'm their lawyer and we'd like some answers. And then you never hear from that person again. You hear from their attorneys, the bank's attorneys, or the outside or inside counsel. So, but it hasn't happened often enough, and I think there's still a lot of leeway to keep the fight by clients, to keep just asking and be the squeaky wheel that eventually gets the oil, hopefully.
Yeah, and it's only related in that, hey, it's a brand new government thing that the government is trying to learn as they go. So that's the whole kind of, I think Jack's point is, hey man, there's no like bright line on this. Clearly, the rejections we think are mostly erroneous. If you fall into that, I was legit, follow the rules, versus, hey, they made a mistake and gave me too much money. So when I missed the call a couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to go to Greece. It was really great.
Do they give you these at
No,
Greece?
No, they don't.
Right.
But showed up. Thank you, Gary. Showed up, vaccine cards ready to go, and had done the Verify ahead of time. Verify had verified that the vaccine cards were legit, but my wife and youngest son's first vaccine card did not have the date on it. Second vaccine card did, but showed that we were within the window. But first vaccine card did not, even though Verify had already verified it. It took 4 people, four all gathered together, like literally huddled around the desk to finally give us the approval to fly, because they just didn't. I mean, truth be told, we're going to leave their ass there, but they just didn't. Nobody knew. Like, it's all brand new. It's like, yet logically to us, we're sitting here like saying, well, but the second vaccine card has a date. Isn't that the one that really matters?
Right.
Isn't the first vaccine card just coming along for the ride because it drove when I could get the second vaccine? Anyway, that's just to say, look, but that was a case of like persistent, okay, you wore me down enough. I consent. You can get on the damn plane.
Yeah. Well, you could always call Robert Mayetta. He probably would have been.
Yeah. I'm gonna need you at Charlotte Douglas stat. All right, man, I'm on it.
It's part of survival CFO. All right. So next question from Beth. Oh yeah, cool. You're welcome, Heather. Our business has received notice from ADP that our fourth quarter RTC, I'm assuming that's ERTC, was approved. We filed for review after the government approved the use of PPP and RTC in December. We've received a notice for the amount of the funds that we're to receive. However, we still have not received the funds. It's been months. Is this a government holdup that you're referring?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're hitting the nail on the head, Beth. And I think that's why, again, we knew for sure that Paychex was advancing funds, knowing that the government was going to be slow, but they're in a pretty secure position. So this is a case where you might check with ADP to see if they'll advance the funds to you, and then they take the credit. We know Paychex does it. So we just speculated that, well, hell, if Paychex is doing it, probably ADP is doing it.
I've heard ADP is too.
Yeah, so I think in that case, there's probably nothing you can do to expedite the refund, especially since you got the notice that it was accepted. But, you could have them still call on your behalf, but the likelihood that you're going to receive the funds anytime in the next couple months is probably pretty low. So I would see if ADP would advance the funds through a program they have established.
Yeah, we've heard as long as 3 to 7 months. So
Yeah, wide range there.
yeah, somewhere between 3 and 40 years.
Yeah, somewhere between tomorrow and never. I'm laughing because it's like
This,
so this one's for you, Jack. It's so Joseph Kellerman-esque. He's laughing. You guys can't see his picture, but he's laughing. It's like you can't do anything but laugh. Yes, sir. It lives.
Wow, we're getting in a lot of good references today.
Yeah, I had to go
Excellent.
deep on that one. That was for you.
Okay, thank you. And I will say to reiterate, there's two things in play, I think. One of them is actual, one of them is a Jack theory. And I'm not going to tell you which one is which, but let's say first point is that you have all of these, if everyone was playing from the same rule book, well, let me take this. If the rule book was clearly stated that if you applicant do these things, if you bank do these things, if you SBA do these things, then we SBA will do this, we bank will do this, and then we applicant can accept the money and use it. The problem is that the rule book, as much as they've tried to make it clear what the rules are, you've seen how there have been missteps. We have many entries into the Q&As for these various programs, which are clarifications. There's missteps. There was a change in the government at the White House. And so different things going on that make things difficult. And then even if you have the rules, you have to have humans interpret them. So you have administrators, regulators, eventually the courts, the judges and juries, but we're not there yet to my prior comment. So those fights really haven't geared up, which they will, most likely towards the end of this year, beginning of next year, and throughout. It's probably gonna be several years of litigation dealing with all of these issues. Private rights of action, but also groups of people saying, well, wait a minute, why discrimination? Why was this person, these people given preference and others? Similar to, we mentioned last week on the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, they gave minorities preference. Everybody could apply, but they were going to process the minority applications within those first two that were applied for in those first 2 weeks with a priority, and that was deemed discrimination. So they said, sorry, we're not going to do that. It's first come, first served from day one, not day 15. So the other thing is that you have to have, there's people that are not willing to put themselves on the line, and so there's the banks have their own risk tolerance. So even like ADP and Paychecks that are basically acting as a creditor, as a sub-lender that may be advancing these funds, they're still taking a credit risk that they're not going to get the money back. And so like any bank, they have metrics that govern their ability to be able to do certain things. So, and I say this only because, and I don't know, I'm kind of giving it away, this is the Jack theory one, but by saying this, but that
I'm not playing poker with you as my teammate.
I know, my poker money goes like that because I'm just not very good.
Yes, sir.
Is that what?
Yes, sir. And Liz.
Yeah, exactly. And so that it could be that if you go and ask ADP today or Paychecks, can you advance me? And they say no, you should ask them again, because that risk, that number ebbs and flows. And it may be that they start typing on their computer, can we do this? They may say yes 2 weeks, 3 weeks down the road. Again, that is definitely the Jack theory, but based upon how banks deal with their risk tolerance and their ability to lend money, loan facilities, et cetera, within their lending, sub-lending facilities, whether it's for industry, et cetera, it seems logical that if you get a no, you might get a yes at another time, because you're asking at a different time when maybe they have capacity to be able to lend to you that money that you otherwise would get from the government, or from private lender with the SBA guarantee and forgiveness.
So any other questions out there? We are happy to take them. And while we have this lull, we'll do a commercial break. This is sponsored by Whitewater Consulting. Chuck Cooper. Thank you very much, Chuck. Appreciate it.
Did we get anything for that?
We need to. We get swag. And the problem
You
is,
get swag. Me and Jack don't get anything.
this fits you better because my head is like the size of a pea. So everything looks like a big trucker hat for me. It's kind of that big hat, no cattle thing, I guess. I don't know. Any other questions?
I have a thought for the day. This was actually in my dad joke calendar, but the thought of the day is, and this is a little bit rhetorical. So isn't golf the only sport where subpar performance is ideal?
Unless you're in the government.
Yes.
Unless you're trying to expedite ERTC money. Speaking of, here's a question. So here's the question. We have one company that received PPP2 and ERC money. What, if any, precautions do we need to take to ensure we get full forgiveness and do not run into any problems?
If you think about really what's your risk in this scenario, it's that down the road, the government takes the position that part of the payroll dollars that you applied for the retention credit were covered under PPP2. So, if you think about that's really the risk here, then the way that you mitigate that is just make really, 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 really sure your PPP2 application for forgiveness is bulletproof and that you have a very clear roadmap of this period for Gary and these dollars for Gary were PPP2 and sorry, no step on my
flip flops.
These dollars for Gary under this time frame were Gary's retention credit dollars, and I moved Gary around specifically because it literally is on an employee by employee level, so you want to have that kind of traceability. But that's really your risk, is that down the road they say, no, it was the same dollars, and you're like, oh nay, it was not the same dollars.
Which is another shout out for documentation and very clear lines, very objective. A plus B equals C, not A plus B and maybe a little bit of stuff extra equals C. It has to be very linear in that way, and be able to, if you were being deposed or you were on the witness stand, to be able to walk someone who knows nothing about you and nothing about your business, how you got from point A to point C step by step, and why your point A to B to C is totally different from X to Y to Z. And there's not overlap between the two.
I think we've been saying that for about 70 weeks. Yes, this is our 70th week doing this. But it's just going to be 2 weeks.
Yeah. 2 weeks we're out of this thing. I'm going to be back in Chadwick Creek celebrating St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, no, Steely, it's good to have you. We didn't expect, I don't know if anybody's been on here for 70 weeks, maybe Robert, maybe David. And Jack missed the first couple ones. He actually was sitting on one of those calls and said, hey, would you like some dad jokes to join? And we said, sure. We don't have a lot of good ones. So anyway, any other questions out there? There have been some good ones. I don't know. We're kind of wrapping up a little bit early, but yeah, we'll give you guys a few more minutes. And the reason we're together at the bar of the Langtree Plantation up in Mooresville is because we're doing a 2-day offsite, management team offsite, and we're planning all kinds of amazing strategies. It's been fun and very productive. So
I want to bring something else up. Can I bring something else up since you mentioned scheming? And because this happened again to a client, but they were smart enough, or actually at some point they figured it out. Well, two things. First of all, I'd mentioned in the past, beware of things that look legit. but you're like, okay, something just doesn't seem right. And I think I gave the example. I don't know if I fell on my own sword, but I'm kind of one of the nerdy partners around here, and so I get technology, and so this in a moment of just frenzy, this email comes up from Amazon and says, hey, we need to verify some stuff on a purchase. And embarrassingly, my first thought was, okay, what did my kids buy now? I may have thought, what did my wife buy now? But I'm blaming it on the kids. Interestingly, if I had been thinking about it, my Amazon account is linked to my personal email account, not my work account. And what our IT people were doing was testing us in various offices. And I think they targeted people who thought they knew better. At least that's what I accused my IT group of doing. And so they were testing us, and I failed because I did click on that, like, okay, what is this? And and they got me. And then this, I think I mentioned this in my mind in that moment. It was like a skull and crossbones and like fire coming out of the skull. But that's how I felt when I fell for it. But a derivative of that is a lot of times when you read about data security breaches, it doesn't start by them targeting the C-suite of people and trying to figure stuff out. It starts down kind of on the lower levels where you have people that are using potentially their computers for other things, or are just so busy that they are not really paying attention to those kind of things. So they end up clicking on something. It puts a key logging program on their computer, and then that's where they get the critical information on how to get into the system. Once they get into the system, they work their way up the food chain of command and authority to get to that person that has the password that gets to the critical systems. And it's just story after story. It's like, okay, it happened again, it happened again. And we have a data privacy, data security breach team in our Sarasota office. So we also get to hear, some pretty interesting stories. But what I find is most interesting is the first entry into that organization is on the lower levels of professionals or wherever it is. And it could be that you're taking a laptop off site and you have someone who has put their USB into your work computer, and your work computer doesn't know how to stop that. Like on ours, if I put a USB into my laptop, it automatically puts an encryption program on that USB forever. And so, that's just because that's just, our IT people do that. But so long story short is that please do be mindful of that, and be careful about treat your IT and your infrastructure as an asset, and protect that asset like you would any other in your business, because it is a point of vulnerability for your businesses.
Well, and we've seen a lot of that. I mean, last turnaround I was involved in was a insulating glass manufacturing company, and a lot of window and door manufacturers depend on those glass sandwiches arriving in time. And if they don't, they shut down a plant of large companies. And they got hit with ransomware, 1.5 million a few weeks ago, shut down multiple window and door plants, and it's just added weeks to the thing. And they had one ransomware attack before where they paid like $70,000, but this one was 1.5 million. I mean, so that's real terrifying stuff, actually. So, any other questions out there? We've had a really good crew on here today. We had 36 people on. And that's without our Hawaiian friends. And we will post this thing back up this afternoon. It'll be this morning for our Hawaiian friends, but on the BGW YouTube channel. So it'll be up later on this afternoon, East Coast time. Any other thoughts or any other questions out there before we sign off? Jack, you having any other dad jokes before we go?
I thought one was sufficient, and
Yeah.
eventually I'll
Yeah,
find a
we-
good one that we can really genuinely laugh at and be like, yeah, that was stupid. So I'll keep trying.
That's right.
And so you're going to be on vacation, I think, next week.
Yeah, I'll still be doing it.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, that's fine. For Marina, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Marina. Let's see.
Yes.
Yes, Marina. Q&A. Here's another question. Oh, thanks. You too, Anonymous. We appreciate you. All right. Let me think. Did another one just come in? No, we've answered it live. All right, cool. Well, we're going to go ahead and sign off, and then we're going to dive into more deep strategery. You guys have a wonderful day. See you around. See you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.